welcome to my channel. We have a lot to cover today on a big topic, and that topic is loneliness. Today we'll consider two types of loneliness. The loneliness that results from sitting alone as a child with all your hurts and all your feelings and all your emotions. And the second type of loneliness is a spiritual loneliness. When we're young and our brain is not fully developed and our central nervous system isn't online, it takes a lot to process everything that's going on in our environment. If your family was inconsistent, if there was perpetuation of abuse and dysfunction in your family, chances are, as a child, you sat alone and alienated with all those feelings, with all your hurts and all your emotions. This is going to affect your self-identity. There's no doubt about it. We'll develop a distortion, a misconception about who and what we are, even our core identifying beliefs. Let's uncover and challenge and question some of these beliefs that were results of you as a young one sitting alone with all those overwhelming feelings. One of the results of this childhood loneliness is anger. Do you feel like the angry one, the one who has rage? It's deeply logical to have anger. When your voice isn't heard as a young one and you have so much to say and so much to share, but it's pushed down and down and down, it feels just like a pressure. Because we don't have the track record, the environment in which to feel safe and voice our expression, voice our thoughts and feelings, that pressure cooker gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And then suddenly there'll be an outlet and a burst of anger or a burst of rage will come out. Today I put forth that much of your anger is the result of you as a child not being seen, not being heard, and instead sitting alone with all your feelings. What do you think? Another result of childhood loneliness is shame and low self-worth. To a child, the family environment is relatively normal until it's not. When a child does not yet have perspective, much of what goes on in the family environment is internalized. In essence, the young one is asking, why can't I fit into this dysfunction? Why can't I fit into an environment that's perpetuating the trauma? Because of course, as a child, you want to be loved and you want to fit in. Today, I invite you to lovingly inquire. Are you really shameful? Or was it the result of sitting alone as a child with all those emotions and all those feelings? A third result of childhood loneliness is hypervigilance. Let's take a look at that today. When we arrive to a dysfunctional environment, the mind becomes quite active and it in essence removes itself from the heart. When we're young, it's so important to have a nourishing environment where you can come to ease and rest in the heart and be nourished and feel deeply safe. In a home that perpetuates dysfunction, the child's mind is placed on fast forward. The child's mind is trying to make sense and figure out and problem solve in so much complexity. This will feel like we're in the canopy of the tree, jumping from leaf to leaf to leaf. Of course, we then grow up to be adults, and our default mode will continue as one of hypervigilance and anxiety. Today, I invite you to question, am I really the hypervigilant one? What lives underneath the hypervigilance? Was that hypervigilance imprinted upon me as a child, sitting alone? Ultimately, loneliness as a child leads to a case of mistaken identity. And the internalization of all these hurts and feelings, we develop coping mechanisms so that we can fit in or we can feel more secure. Yet as we lovingly inquire and look at our insecurities, this grasping onto the anger, this grasping onto the shame or low self-worth, hypervigilance will start to ease, starts to dissolve. In this dissolution of the mistaken identities, what emerges is authentic self, the truth of who and what we are. I invite you to look at your areas of mistaken identity. Is it really you at your essence? Or did these identities develop after sitting alone, the hurt of sitting alone for many years? Before we consider spiritual loneliness, let's just take a moment to breathe. Take a moment to come to ease. That's the feeling of authentic self, presence, consciousness, rising, coming to the foreground. From here, let's consider spiritual loneliness. The journey of healing is something like this. We arrive here well. We find ourselves in a chaotic environment and in a world that often perpetuates trauma. We develop beliefs about ourselves, and we are largely controlled on autopilot with those beliefs. Some of us will push away the pain and resist and exile all the pain. Some of us choose the path of inquiry, and this is the path of healing, where we're willing to look at our insecurities, where we're willing to be gentle, be compassionate with ourselves, bring our humanity along within the journey of healing. In this journey, it can sometimes feel precarious because as you heal, you're growing a little sprout, and that sprout can go out into the world, and the world's perpetuating trauma, and the sprout can get flattened. And then we go back home and think, oh, I can't do this, I'm so exhausted. But inevitably, the desire in your own heart, the desire to heal, will call you time and time again. The one big heart will call you back over and over again. And that little sprout will get a little bit stronger and will be able to go out in a world that perpetuates trauma. As we become stronger, more spiritually centered in our authentic self, in the wisdom of the trunk, we will look around the world and say, why is it done this way? Why are people speaking in such a harsh way? Why are we hurting the earth? Why are we kicking the dog? This does not make sense. Well, of course it doesn't make sense. And there's a loneliness from seeing the world acting in this way, from hearing people being harsh with one another, from being in an environment where there's denial, seeing the world suffer. In this suffering, there will be a sense of spiritual loneliness. Am I the only one doing this? What in the world's going on? Why is the world acting this way? In this spiritual loneliness, many of us will isolate ourselves. We'll go back. We won't want to interact with our world and be in our world. And this isolation is painful. Ultimately, we will yearn for connection. We can only stay isolated so long. The journey of healing will come to fruition when you break through that yearning, break through that atmospheric burn, and say, I will be the one who loves here. I will choose to be love here. I don't mean sappy love. Love can be clearly setting a boundary with someone who disrespects you. I'm not talking about love with unicorns and rainbows. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do in a confused world is say no. At other times, the answer is to be kind, to spend an extra few minutes with the person who's hurting, or to see the person on the street who's been so dehumanized in homelessness that they are a shell. If you feel this spiritual isolation, this spiritual loneliness. Listen to the yearning. It will carry you through what seems to be impenetrable in the loneliness. It will feel like a thick wall. Listen to that yearning and be the one here who lives the truth of love, yet in a confused world. We together have to be okay being on the precipice, being clear with our words, being loving in our undertones, and proceed accordingly. There is hope for spiritual loneliness. I hope this video inspires you. I always welcome your comments and your questions. If you find this video meaningful, please share it with others so that we can support others on this journey. I'm sending greatest love to you, and I look forward to seeing you back on my channel soon.